Welcome back to Light the Fuse. Charles, how you doing?
Doing okay, yeah. How about you?
Good. We've been seeing a lot of each other recently. Not to give anything away, but we're really working hard, getting some great episodes together. And I don't think, have we announced this on the show properly, that you're going to be a father once again?
No, we have not, and that's why we're stockpiling a lot of episodes so that I have a little bit of a break when this baby comes. So we're preparing this Light the Wick miniseries, and I think that's going to play out over the first couple months of the baby's life. She's due in February. I have another daughter on the way, so very exciting.
Also, you want to you want to cement your legacy for her. You want her to be able to say, my father detailed the production of these stupid movie franchises in forensic detail.
But today,
I think she's going to be proud.
Today we've got David Koepp. This is something for her to be really proud of.
Yeah.
This is one of our favorite interviews we've ever done. I mean, this was really such a amazing time to talk to David, and there's so much to get into. But we're just so thrilled for you to all finally hear this David Koepp interview. It was so amazing to talk to him.
Well, and for those of you who maybe don't know, David Koepp is maybe the most successful screenwriter of the modern era. I think I read his book, his first novel, which came out last year, called Cold Storage, and you open up the jacket and it says like, David Koepp's combined films have grossed $9 billion worldwide or something.
That's with a B, billion.
Yeah, with a B. And it looks like he's in his 40s. This is not a huge amount of time that he's been making these movies, but he's just had hit after hit after hit, and even the movies that weren't successful were incredibly interesting. Charles and I are big fans of The Shadow, but things that you have seen were probably like Jurassic Park, the first Spider-Man, all of the Dan Brown movies. I mean, he has just had a pretty unimpeachable track record, and so we got to talk to him about Mission Impossible, and I think we don't get into the other De Palma stuff, but we do get into that stuff next time.
Yeah.
And it was just really, really fun. And I think Charles and I were both just blown away with how charming and upbeat and hilarious he was. And he was very generous with his time, and we could not be more thankful that he chose to chat with us.
Yeah, I mean, it was just amazing and so excited. I mean, the guy wrote Jurassic Park at 29, which is pretty insane. So, he's been around for a long time, just making hit after hit. And then whenever, like you said, whenever it's not a hit, it's still really fascinating, interesting movies. And wrote 3 De Palma movies, Carlito's Way, Mission Impossible, and Snake Eyes, and we talked to him about that. I think that might be a little bit this week, but
that's next week.
It's great. It's a 2-part episode. You're going to love it. Also, if you're coming by for the first time, I want to tell you to check out our old episodes, because we've talked to so many great people, from Christopher McQuarrie to Brad Bird to amazing editors and cinematographers, Paul Hirsch, who edited Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. We talked to him 2 different times, and we're hopefully going to get him again, actually, in the spring. A little tease there for you. Hopefully that happens. We also talked to Marianne Brandon and Mary Jo Markey, who edited MI3. We talked to Robert Elswit, who shot 2 Mission Impossible movies and so many other things like the Paul Thomas Anderson movies.
Charles, you're forgetting about Eddie Hamilton, who listens to the show religiously, and we are going to get a very strongly worded email now.
Yes, of course, Eddie Hamilton, Lauren Balfe, who scored Fallout, and both of those guys are doing the next 2 missions. And, just so many amazing episodes. We've done extensive making of episodes that you should definitely go back and check. And as you go to, if you are discovering the show for the first time and you're going through all these old episodes, whenever we're mentioning things or we're referencing pictures or videos, whatever, you can find them all on our website. We have this great archive that we've put together now on our website, so you can always refer there if you're listening to an episode. And there's something there that we're talking about. Chances are you will find it on our website. We're in the process of updating it, and we're really close to being done with it. So that's the episode guide on our website, which is LightTheFuse-TheOfficialMission.com. There's also other stuff on there too. You can connect to our TeePublic store there through the merch section, and plenty of other things too you can find on there. So check out our website. We're also on all kinds of platforms. We've just added ourselves to Amazon. Has a new podcast platform they're doing with Audible, and so we're there. We're also on a new podcast. I don't know if it's new, but it's new for us. There's a podcast platform in India called Ghana, which we are now a part of as well. So we're everywhere. We're on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple. You can find us anywhere. So please, if you're listening for the first time, subscribe. You will love our show. We work super hard getting all this stuff going. And if you're a big fan and you want to hear more of us and get more bonus stuff, you can sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/lightthefuse.
Wow. I love it. Well, I've got my own things to say, Charles, which is...
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, well, this episode is brought to you by Jeremy Dillon. And he has a podcast called My Favorite Album. And guess who's about to be on that podcast, Charles?
You.
Yep, and you.
Yeah, and me.
Too. Yeah. But he's this great guy who is a concert promoter. He's Australian. He's got a great accent. And every week he interviews a different musician, songwriter, actor, or filmmaker about the music they love and how it's influenced them in their work. We did not talk about music, so his spiel is just completely out the window. But we talked about the Mission Impossible versus James Bond franchise, and we're going to be sharing those episodes too on the main feed here. But you should also go listen to My Favorite Album because it's really great. And I also want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by John B. And additionally, it is brought to you by Real Estate Interest LLC, real estate advice for growing companies. Now, if you aren't even in the market to buy or sell, you can call them. They can help you save money, and they'll just be really helpful in a big way. So if you are looking for that commercial real estate, please go to Real Estate Interest LLC. And all three of these fantastic people help us out every week, so we cannot thank them enough. The show would not be here without them, really.
Yeah.
And if you love this, if you're listening for the first time and you love it, think about joining the Patreon. We have a lot of great perks and new episodes every week on there. So we are really busting our hump for you guys, and you should definitely take advantage of it. So we will be back afterwards to wrap things up. But now here is Kevin Blumenfeld's just outright criminal ripoff of the plot. Well, usually we start off asking, were you a fan of the Mission Impossible show before you signed on for the project?
Yes, with the exception of Martin Landau.
Ooh.
I'm just kidding. I remember he was complaining about the movie years ago, so I thought I'd start out of the gate taking a shot at Martin.
Were you involved at all at one point when because there was rumor that the TV cast was going to be a part of the movie at some point?
I don't think that was ever going to happen.
Yeah.
Brian is not. Actually, he is a great sentimentalist, but he's not a sentimentalist in that way.
Right.
And I don't. You can always kind of. Those don't usually work.
Right.
I mean, they work in a sort of, hey, look, it's those people from the TV show, but not in a story of the movie way. I was, to answer your question, growing up, I loved the show. I watched it. I think it was on, I was born in 1963, so I would have been watching it in after-school reruns probably.
Okay.
And I loved it. And I actually loved Roland Hand and his many disguises. I thought it was a great show. It was really fun.
Were you brought onto the project by De Palma, or
yes?
Okay.
Yes, I had Brian and I had done Carlito's Way together a couple of years prior to that, and we'd gotten along great. And I was about to do. I'd just finished Lost World, I think, and I was about to start. I was going to do Shock Corridor. You remember the Sam Fuller movie?
Fuller.
Yeah. Somebody was going to remake it at Disney. I can't remember the producer. And if there's one thing that seemed perfectly suited, it's Shock Corridor and Disney. And but I had an idea for a journalist and goes in and can't get out. And I thought it was going to be kind of cool. And I think we were negotiating or talking, or somebody was trying to convince somebody to do it. And I got a call from Brian, who said, it was pre-cell phones or mostly pre-cell phones. So I remember calling him back from a restaurant, and I said, "What is so urgent?" And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, I think I'm going to do Shock Corridor at Disney. And I said, "I'm eating." And he said, No, what are you doing? What are you writing? I said, "I think I'm going to write Shock Corridor at Disney." And he said, "Oh, shock court? That's a terrible idea. I said, Brian, did you just call me to berate? I'm eating, And he said, Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise. I have to see you in the morning. And the rest is history.
Was there any material at that point? Because we've heard that, Sidney Pollack and some other people had been flirting with the idea before.
Yeah, there was several pieces of material. There was a script that Willard Huck and Gloria Katz had written. And then subsequent to that, there was a treatment that Brian had done with Steve Zalian. But Zalian had to go because and I've never asked him directly, either he had to go because he had another commitment, or he had to go because he got a whiff of what it was going to be like working with Tom and Brian, and perhaps a certain lack of freedom that he might have enjoyed. And so he left. But I came in, and then Brian and I reworked the treatment because it had been a first draft, but also I had some other ideas. And nobody can ever just do somebody else's thing. You got to wreck it. So I started. So Brian and I worked through another treatment, and then I wrote some scripts.
Did you read that original script?
Which original one? The Huck and Katz?
Huck and, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I did. It wasn't the direction that I wanted to go, but it had a lot of good things in it.
Okay.
Did any of it manage to make its way into the movie? Anything from that draft?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay. So what was
his first name? I think he was Ethan in their draft. Okay. I think he remained Ethan, and Hunt was mine because Hunt seemed like a cool name. But that wasn't the coolest name. I was very happy with Luther Stickle, which is one of my favorite character names that I've made up. That was Ving Rhames' character.
It's hung around for a long time now.
There's a funny story about that. You want to hear it?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
I figured this is the place, right?
Yeah.
So we were in Prague right before shooting. So we were doing rehearsals. And it was fascinating because Prague had just reopened in the mid-90s, after the fall of communism. And so we were Brian had this room in a hotel that we were all staying in that was where, like, the Politburo must have stayed when they came to town. It was this gigantic room with a huge conference table with a giant map of Europe at the end of it. And it was, you could just picture, like Brezhnev up at the map, talking about where they wanted to go next. It was a really cool room. So anyway, we were rehearsing, and we got to the end, and the script had been through its turbulent life, and there's more turbulence to come, but it was in a good state, and everybody was pretty cool at that point, and we were ready to start shooting. And we were finishing a rehearsal, and Brian said, "Anybody got anything else?" And Ving Rhames said, "Yeah, I got a question." We said, "Okay, what's the question?" He said, "How come the black guy gotta die?" And we said, "Well, a number of people die. It's not just him." And he said, "Yeah, but how come the black guy always gotta die?" And we were like, "Oh, okay, Bing, you're right." So we kept him alive. And what I think is hilarious about it is 7 movies later, Bing's still there. He was not only right about the note, but he also, in terms of career longevity, was right about staying alive.
Yeah.
Where was he supposed to die in the script? Do you remember?
On the train at the end. It was all very exciting.
Well, should we start talking about the turbulence of this script?
Sure.
So why was it turbulent even before you told Ving Rhames that he got to live? Where was it at that stage? There was,
there's 2 very strong personalities at no more than 2, but the 2 dominant personalities at the center of the movie were Tom and Brian, and they liked each other very much, and they also disagreed a lot. Brian has a really clear viewpoint on things. He is an auteurist, no question. And Brian gets to be called an auteur because he writes half his own stuff. But even on the stuff he doesn't write, it's an extremely clear point of view. And he's one of the few directors where you can look at a shot and say, "Oh, it's a Brian De Palma movie." And that's rare. And you hire somebody for that, and then it's very hard for them to just give it up. And Tom, I think, both wanted to respect that and struggled with it because he didn't always agree with the viewpoint. And he had a very clear idea, and he was producing the movie and also had a very clear idea about what he thought it should be. So, you just had two brilliant guys who a lot of the time would get along great and were great allies and sometimes wouldn't. I think Tom also felt quite a bit of anxiety about it. It was going to be a great, big, expensive movie, and he was producing the movie, which he was doing with Paul, Wagner for the first time. And so there was a, really high degree of personal responsibility for it. And as personally responsible as Tom Cruise feels about every single thing he does and every single person that he meets throughout his entire life, if you could multiply that by a few for this, the first giant movie that he was producing and starring in and creating a franchise from, there's a certain level of attentiveness there. And and Brian and I had done a thing together, and we had a relationship, but we trusted each other. And so there was a dynamic. Maybe he felt it was 2-on-1. Now, granted, there was 2 of us, and then there was 1 of Tom Cruise, so it could have been 50 of us. It wouldn't necessarily have mattered. He's got an extremely strong personality and point of view. And then I think what happened is the studio made a sort of, Sherry Lansing was running the studio at the time, and she made, I think, what was a tiny bit of a mistake in terms of working with Tom, which was to say, at a certain point, we love the script. We don't have any notes. And I think that makes a person nervous, especially if you're a person who's used to working on something exhaustively. Brian and I had no intention of stopping, but I think he heard, we don't have any notes, and he thought, oh, they're just going to try to jam me into this and get it out because it's a title, it's a big thing. And so that at that point, then he wanted to bring in Bob Towne to work on it, and I didn't like that, because I was also young and I didn't like anybody touching my stuff, and I didn't realize that perhaps you shouldn't work on $100 million movies if you don't want anybody touching your stuff. And so, there was a lot of back and forth at that point. The next several months, as Towne did his thing, and then I'd come back and do more of my thing, and then at some point we're both on the movie, but in different hotels in London. The studio's maybe going to shut it down, or maybe they're not. There's pages flying everywhere. I was staying up for 3 days at a time trying to combine things, and it was sort of chaotic. It was chaotic. It wasn't sort of chaotic.
That was leading up to the production, all of that? You in separate hotels?
Yeah, that was all before cameras ever rolled. Once cameras rolled, it settled down, as things tend to. There were still, last-minute rewrites and things like that. But there wasn't the sort of... It didn't have that feeling of a little bit of the Wild West that it did prior to production.
What was the biggest, log jam in terms of was there a set piece or something that caused all this to happen, or was it just rewriting the script again and again, or what was the kind of holdup?
Just rewriting the script again and again. Okay. And I think because it was a complicated plot.
Yeah.
And we all wanted it to be a complicated plot, but you kind of have to all agree on what the complicated plot is and how much complication is too much.
Okay.
And I remember one day there was the opening, you which is quite extensive and jam-packed, full of exposition and death and reversals and setups. And, it's a very complex piece of writing that starts, with a story inside a story that turns out to be a fake. And then these people are all running a thing, but somebody's running a thing on them. And I remember getting in a disagreement with Tom about, there was one security guard who had no lines. He had to push a button. And he said, well, who's that guard? And I said, that's the guard who works there. And he said, no, but who is he really? And I said, no, he really is the guard who works there. And he said, yeah, but wouldn't it be better if he wasn't the guard who works there, but he was actually somebody else, and we find out who it is, and Ethan figures out that that's who it is and I'm like, no, it wouldn't be better because Ethan just needs to walk through the door. And then that would lead to an hour of discussion.
Wow.
I'm sure he doesn't remember, but if he did, he might tell the story in a different way. But, we all have our opinions.
What did you think when the movie came out and people said it was still too complicated?
It was, Brian called me the day after it came out, and he said, "Dave, there's a one-word buzz on this movie. Incomprehensible." I said, no. It's supposed to be complicated. This is okay. People are going to love it. And they did. And it was fun.
Well, you have this amazing archive that you have on your website of your old scripts, a lot of scripts, and you have multiple drafts of Mission Impossible, and we had a chance to take a peek at them. So I wanted to just ask a couple questions about how certain things evolved. I mean, I think maybe the biggest thing is the romance between Ethan and Claire. And, it was more explicit in earlier drafts. I think in the earliest draft you posted on your website, the two of them are having an affair right from the beginning. And it's hidden from Phelps, and Ethan's deciding whether or not in the opening of the movie, should I, he's trying to grapple with whether or not he wants to reveal that to Phelps. And then as the more drafts come in, that gets shaded back. And then to the final shooting script, which is, then it's very obviously very close to what ended up in the movie, except for one thing is that they have sex on the train. They make love on the train, or it's implied they do, in the middle of the movie, like right before the Langley heist, I think is when it happens. So I just wanted to ask you about the evolution of the Claire-Ethan romance and what decisions went into why it was scaled back and stuff like that.
It was a little while ago, so I may not remember clearly why. I remember that's how it was originally. I'm not sure I remember how I lost that fight, because I liked them having an affair. I liked that they were sleeping together, and I liked that he was morally compromised, and I thought that was going to be fascinating. And having an affair with the wife or girlfriend, I can't remember, I think wife, the wife of your mentor, that's not so good. And it gets into some, Arthur Guinevere Lancelot. There's some very nice triangle-y stuff there, and I love to write triangles. I think that somebody involved maybe didn't want to play that. So I think in the end, the thinking was, no, they're not having an affair, but Phelps's treachery and jealousy actually causes the thing to happen that he was most afraid of, which is that they end up together.
Right.
Which is fine too. And obviously the movie did well, and no one was injured during filming. So that's good. I liked that he was having an affair. I thought that would have been kind of fun.
Did they shoot the scene on the train? Did they shoot that where the two of them consummate their romance before the Langley heist?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Before the Langley heist, in the middle of the movie, you mean?
Yeah, it's in
on that train, right?
They're on it's a different train. The train where we first meet Krieger and Luther,
right? And
they run down the whole scheme of what they're going to do, and then there's a scene in the train there, in the shooting script that you have on your website that the two of them have a little conversation after that scene, and then they.
Yeah, I thought the best sequence in that section of the movie that I hope was in the first draft that you read was the rounding up the team sequence.
Right.
Was that in there where he,
I think that's in your second draft.
Yeah, somebody's busted out of a prison in India.
Yeah.
There's an extent 7 or 8 page rounding up the team sequence. Yeah. When after Ethan's team's all been killed. And he's off now on his own, and he has to go figure out who's done this and why. But of course, he needs people to help him. So every great team movie has a rounding up the team sequence. It's Guns of Navarone. It's a million of them. So Brian and I had come up with what we thought was fun and funny and adventurous and had some good size to it. And it just died in the last minute because of budget. It was. Right. A very expensive sequence, but it made me so sad because I particularly liked the prison break in India. I thought it was a great idea for how to bust somebody out of prison.
Right.
You go see them, you shoot them with the darts that they don't even know about, so they think they're dead, and then the prison takes them up to the roof to cremate them, and you rescue them with a helicopter. It's great because guy wakes up in a coffin and he's sliding toward flames. That seemed like a lot of fun to me.
There was also another team member, right?
Yes, who was it?
Paul
Mitnick? I want to say Mitnick.
Oh, right, the computer guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he became
shuffling of
sort of combined with Luther Stickle, yeah. Yeah. As one of those Spider-Man movies came to call him the guy in the chair.
Yes.
I like to think that we had an early guy in the chair in Luther.
Yes.
There's always a guy in the chair. Yeah, it was a shame we lost that sequence. Imagine how well the movie would have done if we'd had it.
Actually, we did a whole episode about. I looked at the archives. Ronald Moore has archives of his work, and he had that set piece in his archives for MI2, and because I think they were trying to carry it over and use that set piece in the second movie, which it didn't end up happening.
Nice.
But
yeah, it's doomed to get cut. Doomed to get cut. There's stuff like that in your career. I have a line of dialogue that I've put into 5 or 6 movies, and twice it has even managed to be shot, but was cut both times. And I'm determined to use it.
Someday.
Can you give us the line?
Yeah, because I just put it in another script, and God help us all. Here's the line. If anybody can beat me to it, good luck. I'm not sure I admire your tone. That's it. It's a very simple line. I'm not sure I admire your tone. And I just want it to be in a movie. I want, and preferably performed by someone with a British accent. But that's all I want. And I can't make it happen.
There's another set piece in your first draft that I thought was really cool, and I wanted to know what the origin of this was. Is when Ethan's going to go meet with Kittredge, which I think would end up being just a phone call when he calls him from the train station in the final movie. So he goes to meet him somewhere in person, and Claire's like, I don't think you should do it. And when he goes to meet him, he times it with this military wedding coming out at the same time. So all these military people come out wearing hats, and then Ethan puts on a military hat and outfit, and he fits in with this whole military wedding that's going on outside St. Paul's Cathedral. And then he's angry at Kittredge for framing his parents for the drug whatever thing, and then Phelps shows up on a motorcycle and saves him, and that's how the reveal of Phelps happens in this early draft. So I just wanted to hear about that set piece too.
Well, I was that was me trying to use an idea that I had earlier in the draft that didn't work or didn't make it. People in military uniforms are so striking, especially when they're white. And the idea that, how dare he go meet him? They'll just see him and he'll be there and there'll be no way for him to get away. But of course, if you, time it with a bunch of people who are going to be dressed exactly like you, imagine the visual. And Brian is very drawn to great visuals and is adept at creating them. I'd had it earlier in the script. In the opening sequence, Ethan was going to be in naval whites. And then when everything turns to shit and he's, the team is killed and he's fleeing through Prague, what had been a perfectly ordinary thing to wear at an embassy reception was now making him stick out like a sore thumb. And I had him in a sea of black-clad, European, nightclubbing type people. And there he is in white. And so it's like the last thing he should be wearing. He's sticking out like a sore thumb. Problem with that was it's a nice idea for one shot, but it means that it dictates this rather extreme costume for the first 20 minutes of the movie, and nobody wants that. So at the end that you're talking about was me trying to use that idea in a different context.
Wow. It would also have been cool if you got that white outfit covered in blood. Sure. Opening sequence.
I wanted to ask about Max, because in early drafts, Max is a man, and then at a certain point.
No way, really? I forgot that.
And then it was switched to, obviously, Vanessa Redgrave portrayed Max in the final movie. So I guess you don't remember that, so maybe this isn't a good question.
No, it's an excellent question. I think that has to be Brian just doing some interesting casting.
Yeah.
I'm sure Max was a man, and it sounds very much like he said, I like Vanessa Redgrave. And we said, let's not change the name. Let's just leave it. It's great. A lovely surprise. And then I love how flirty she is. I mean, she's such a wonderful actress. But, that she finds Cruise a very appealing young man.
They tried to get her back for multiple subsequent installments and never closed the deal. So, yeah, they tried. Charles, you look like you're looking at a list of notes. So
I do have a lot of notes, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I wanted to ask, because De Palma recently, in an interview, talked about the original 6-week hold up in a hotel room with Steve Zalian. I think he said smoking cigarettes and eating peanuts or something, coming up with the story for Mission, which then was passed on to you. And then you said you had a story, session with De Palma. What was that story session like, and how long did it go? And were you eating peanuts and smoking cigarettes?
We ate pretzels.
Okay.
And yeah, he smoked a lot of cigarettes. I can't remember if I was smoking at the time or not. I was on and off with smoking in the 90s. Not a good idea. But we ate Snyder's of Hanover sourdough pretzels at a house he'd rented in L.A. and worked at a very long table and, went through and made our outline. But it was fun. I mean, the most fun... I asked Brian once, actually, what's your favorite part of the process? And he said, making them up, which is the most fun. It's when anything's possible. Nobody's fighting with you, except maybe your collaborator. But you're not fighting with budget, weather, schedule, the flu you got, the numerous collaborators you have who might have different ideas about how things should go. There's none of that. There's just the pure, hey, what if he comes down from above like Top Copy and the floor lights up like that Michael Jackson video? It's the pure fun of dreaming it up, and anything's still possible.
Is that where that sequence came from, in the train chase, I'm assuming?
No, in the middle, in the breaking into the CIA.
No, I mean like in that brainstorming session. Is that where those ideas first were? Yeah,
they come up bit by bit. The first thing you do is you decide who your people are, who the characters are, right, and then you rough out the general storyline, and then you go into the It's nice to leave the specifics of a lot of the scenes slightly vague, their intentions, but you don't want to, you don't want to bear down too hard on it until you're writing it. You want to leave a little room for creation in the moment. But set piece things, I mean, those you really have to carefully sculpt.
Right.
And they take time. Before you touch pen to paper, you have to know exactly what happens in the whole sequence. And those come bit by bit. I remember Brian was watching TV and saw that there was a fire. I don't know if it was at the CIA or if it was at some other important government building, but he saw the fire trucks pulling up and he thought, oh yeah, what do they do if there's a fire? They got to let somebody in. Do they have their own fire department? What if they didn't? And so that was a way, to get into the building. And then we started thinking about a standalone computer. I think this was before the term air-gapped was common. And what would the defenses be? And I know I've told this story before, but we had a number of CIA advisors at the time, former agents and such, and we would ask them, well, what are the actual defenses? Tell us, lay it out. No matter how complicated, we can handle it. Tell us, what's it, as much as your security clearance will allow. And they'd say, okay, well, we have a bunch of security cameras, and there's a guard in a room watching the feeds. And we were like, yeah, good. That's totally cool. You guys thought of that. Okay. So we threw that and we were like, all right, their real stuff is very boring. Let's not do that. That's terrible. And then we started having ideas like, let's just make up our own shit. It's not a documentary. And Brian did want him to come down from the ceiling like a Top Copy of the Jewel Heist.
Right.
And I did. I wanted the floor to let's create obstacles. You can't touch the floor. What happens if you do? It lights up and the buzzer goes off. And then there's a temperature sensor, so he better not get too hot. Oh, and if he gets hot, he'll sweat, and the sweat will hit the floor. And then throw in another thing, the rat up in the Brian's thing about suspense is always you got to set the suspense hook, and once it's set, you milk it as long as is humanly possible. And so every possible complication you can throw at them, you do. And draw it out as long as you can. So it comes bit by bit. And I remember one day I went in and I was not feeling well. And I said, what if she poisons a guy? And then he runs out and barfs. And, so she's meeting the guy in the cafeteria. And, the bit by bit, that stuff comes together.
Wow.
And the sound side of it, that they have to be silent. And then this, this is always, I think De Palma refers to it as the silent sequence.
Yes.
Was that from the idea from the start that it would be a whole silent sequence?
I don't know if it was right at the start, but it was at some point as we were creating it, Brian, it was the mid-90s and CG had just come on the scene a few years before, and so everything was, there's a lot of giant spectacle at that point, and it was very loud. And Brian said, I'm so tired of these thunderingly loud movies. He said, nobody does anything with silence anymore. Let's have a thing in the middle of a great big summer movie where it gets almost silent and see if we can make it work. So, and I think a lot of good ideas come that way as reaction, like I'm sick of everything's doing this. Let's try that.
Right.
So, a lot of, sometimes you embrace what's going on at the moment and try and do your thing with it. And other times you reject it and try and do the opposite. It was still a great big, popcorn movie set piece, but it had some other ideas behind it.
Koepp 1 in the books. If his time wasn't literally worth an insane amount of money, we would have probably just kept talking to him for the rest of the day.
I love his De Palma impression.
Yeah, that impression is great. We love impressions. Charles mercifully does not do many impressions. I take up the mantle of the bad impersonator, but that impression was actually spot on.
Yeah.
I mean, he blew me out of the water.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. I mean, there's so much stuff to talk about. I mean, I love that we got the origin of the names of Ethan Hunt and Luther Stickle. David gave us Luther Stickle, gave us that name, and he said that the original writers had Ethan, but he added Hunt. So now we know where these names came from, which is just, it's so amazing to hear about that.
Yeah, he is a font of information, and I feel like maybe it's just the act of writing is such a personal thing that he really was able to recall a lot of details and a lot of things that we had never heard before, which was really fun. And I also wanted to say that I had talked to David a couple months ago for an hour for another thing, and we'll put that in the show notes too. So if you want even more Koepp action, you can go there and watch that.
Yes,
too.
That's a great interview. Drew talks to Koepp about his whole career, and it's really awesome. There was also the story that he told about Ving Rhames' note, which I think we had heard before that Ving Rhames had brought up this idea, but then to get a firsthand account of how that played out in the room, where Ving Rhames said, why does the black guy always have to die? And it was the greatest note in like film franchise history. Like Ving Rhames is in this entire series now, Mission Impossible 7 and 8. He's in all of them because of that note that he stood up and said that, which is just amazing. I love that story.
Yeah. Really, really great. I mean, he's probably bought many houses because of that note. So, yeah.
I also loved hearing about the Langley Heist, and how he and De Palma were all the things like setting the suspense hook and then adding all these things to it, and how they were doing that over pretzels. I love to hear that.
We don't know if he was smoking or not. Koepp could not confirm whether or not he was smoking at the time. So, this is one of our favorite interviews, and we can't wait for you to hear the second part next week, because we get into some really interesting stuff, particularly about his relationship with De Palma and some unmade collaborations.
Yeah.
That didn't actually see the light of day.
Yeah.
So,
but if you love David Koepp's work, you should definitely check out his website, and you should check out the script archive. I want to say that is it davidkoepp.com?
It's davidkoepp.com. And I want to say this because I was on it last night for something. Not only does he have almost every script he's ever written, he has every draft of every script he's ever written. I mean, it is fucking crazy. And it's really, really cool. And it's just an insanely valuable sort of asset for anybody who writes about these movies, who's interested in screenwriting.
Yeah.
You can see all these amazing drafts of a sequel to Spider-Man that he almost did, and then a sequel to that movie that never happened too. I mean, it's crazy. And we also both want to, acknowledge his new short story, which is on Audible right now, and it's called Yard Work, and it's fantastic, and it's super scary. Narrated by Kevin Bacon, his close collaborator, and just a lot of fun. And it's about an hour long, so next time you're going on a walk or a hike or something, download it. It is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's so freaky and creepy, and I was listening to it alone, in a cabin in Wisconsin, and that's where it takes place. And it was very scary to listen to it that way by myself in a cabin.
Very immersive, Charles.
Yeah. So I also want to urge everybody to go to our TeePublic store and buy a shirt. We actually added just recently a fan-made shirt. It was made by Matt Dammer. If you remember, Drew, Matt Dammer is the one who gave us the ornaments of Ethan Hunt dangling from the Langley sequence and from outside of the Burj. So Matt, who's this great artist and was so nice enough to give us, first of all, those ornaments, but now donate this design for us to our TeePublic store. If you go there, you'll see it's a silhouette of Ethan running in Fallout in the big running chase scene in London. It's a silhouette of Ethan running, and it has Light the Fuse, in his body, in his chest. It's really cool. So you should check that out and buy a shirt or a mug or a mask or anything your heart desires there. There's notebooks and all kinds of stickers, pins, magnets. You can get anything. Just every dollar counts. It all goes toward us making this show, and it makes it possible for us to do it on a weekly basis. And then you can show your support for the show by wearing it or showing it around. It's a really cool design that Matt made for us. So thank you so much to Matt. You can find that TeePublic store is linked from our website, LightTheFusePodcast.com. Again, check out our website. The episode guide that's on there is really great for looking at show notes and all the making of episodes and all that stuff. You'll see all kinds of good photos and videos and things on there. And our Patreon is patreon.com/lightthefuse. As Drew said earlier, we do bonus episodes every week. We also have commentaries for all 6 movies on there that we did, and bonus interviews and sneak peeks of upcoming interviews, all kinds of good stuff there. And with that in mind, also I want to give a special thank you to Jacob Ballard, who Jacob's been with us for a long time, so can't do it without his support. And also want to say thank you to our intern Abby Smith, who's been awesome. And this episode was mixed and edited by Luke Burson. And what else? Anything else, Drew?
Just if you could subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening to this podcast, that really helps and is a fairly low impact way of, helping us out a little bit.
Yes. And follow us on social media too.
Yeah. Light the Fuse Pod on Instagram and Twitter. We're always posting weird stuff and sharing videos and all sorts of stuff. So you should definitely be a part of that. And, let us know, reach out to us. If you have episode ideas, things you want to hear, people you want us to talk to, we are always listening, and we're pretty good at following through. So, yeah, go ahead and do that. And we'll be back next week with part 2 of David Koepp, which we cannot wait for you guys to hear.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. And before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod, and email us questions or comments at LightTheFusePodcasts@gmail.com. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.